The morning back in the middle 1950s, I returned from Korea, and I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division as regimental chaplain. And when I got there, I met another young chaplain, and he told me about a series of books written by Roy Angel, a pastor from Atlanta. And it was in that book, that one of his books, that I was introduced to Rizbah, which is a story. It comes out of the Old Testament, the 21st chapter of 2 Samuel. It seems that Israel has been in a very deep famine for quite a long time, for 3 years actually at least. And David is trying to figure out an answer. And so he keeps going to God, and he keeps asking God, what's the problem? And God says, hey, the problem is that you got an issue with the Gibeonites. And he said, what do you mean an issue with the Gibeonites? Well, he goes back and researches, and he finds out that the Gibeonites were a part of what was known as the nation of the Amorites. And King Saul had made a special treaty with them, and he said he would treat them the right way. Well, when he finally got everything settled down, he really beat up on the Gibeonites and actually destroyed a whole lot of the people. And so they had great resentment toward him. And so God said to David, the problem you got with your famine is that and drought is that you got a problem with the Gibeonites. If you'll settle that problem, you'll find that you don't have any more drought. So what did King David? He sends an emissary to the Gibeonites, and he says, hey, I hear we got a problem. What's the answer? And the Gibeonites sent back a message to him and said, well, we have a problem, but it isn't with you and isn't with Israel. And we just, we're not going to ask you for any money or any kind of resource like that, and we're not going to ask you to kill anybody. All we'd like to have you do is give us the 6 sons of King Saul that are still existing. And King David had made some kind of an arrangement, and he couldn't do anything but do it, and so he gave him the 6 sons of Saul. And the Gibeonites took the 6 sons of Saul, and they took them out on the Hill of Gibeah, which was outside of their city, and they put them on crosses out there, or on sticks, and they hanged them out there. Well, the problem was that when they hang them up, there was a rule that said you couldn't take them down until the beasts of the field and whatever else would destroy the bones, and they fell off the stakes. And so they were out there, and of course what happened, one of the sons of Saul had a mother by the name of Rizbah. And Rizbah she loved her son very much. And so she went out to the Hill of Gibeah, and she was out there trying to maintain so that her son's bones wouldn't be, or skin wouldn't be destroyed by the beasts and by the birds. And so at night she would keep watch and keep the beasts away. And in the daytime, when the ravens came and the other birds of the air came to take part of her son, she would wave her sackcloth in the air and make sure that they would never be there. Well, this started in June, and it was in September, and she had been out there every day and every night since June till September. And finally the word got to King David about Rizbah, and they were concerned about her, and they said she probably is going to die. She must be crazy. And when he found out was what going on, that their boy's bones were out there, he said, that's a stupid law, and he took it away. He threw it away. He got rid of it, and he brought down the bones. Now, there's one question that we could ask of 3 of the groups there. We could ask the question of the sons of Saul who are out there on top of Gibeah, the Hill of Gibeah. We could say, why are you here? And their answer would be, because of our dad. Our dad's sin, our dad's failure. Our dad's not doing anything quite like he ought to, all kinds of mistakes. You know, I spent 5 years as a prison chaplain, and during that time I met with small groups of 7 inmates for probably 150 different groups. And one of the things we always talked about was the conflict that existed between 12 and 17. And they invariably said that the problem they had between 12 and 17, which was a problem that pretty well set the stage of their lives for their whole future, was a result of a failure. And most of the failures were significant others in their lives, and especially their fathers. Their fathers sinned, their fathers broke from them, their fathers fragmented the family, And as a result, these boys found themselves in deep trouble. Now, obviously, it wasn't all the father's fault, but the father was the one that was the trigger. And I read a story not so long ago by a former football player at Washington Lee. The story was about, he was in Baltimore, and he was out on the street, and he saw a little boy sitting on the curb, and the little boy had a deflated football beside him, and his head was down sort of between his legs, and obviously he was very despondent and blue. And so the football player, a former football player, went and sat down beside him, and he asked the little boy, "What's going on?" And his little boy said, "Sir, have you ever played football?" And the man said, "Yeah, I was the captain of the team at Washington Lee, and I played end." And he said, "Well, you know, when you're on a football team and somebody gets offside, it isn't just the guy who gets offside that pays the penalty. Everybody on the team pays the penalty. And up in the stands, it's the same way. They pay a penalty. And even if there's people listening on the radio or television, they pay the penalty." And you know, my daddy came home tonight, and my mommy had been so happy. She had made a big meal. She was singing. She was having a good time. And he came in the door, and he'd been drinking. And he got mean with her. And I came out here, and I sat down here waiting for some friends of mine so we could play football. But you know, my daddy was offside today. And said, because he's offside, everybody's offside. You know, that's a principle for all of us. Well, if somebody's offside, it may well be that we're offside. Now, we could ask the question a second time. We could ask it of the Gibeonites. "Why are you here on the Hill of Gibeah?" And they'd reply, "Because of revenge. We want to get even. We have the right to get even." And so they let their bitterness and their hatred and their vitriol keep them from being the kind of people they could have been. And they went out on the hill, and they killed these 6 men. And the hate and the pain didn't change, because you don't get rid of revenge that way. I remember a story that I shared before about the jelly spoon. This lady was in a care facility, and she was really not doing well, and she was probably going to die. And there was something about her that wasn't good. And so one of the nurses tried to get a counsel with her to see what was the problem. And she said, "Well, the problem is I hate my brother." And the lady said, "You hate your brother?" "Yeah, I hate my brother." "Why do you hate your brother?" "Well, because when my mom died, she had a lot of family heirlooms, and she gave them to me. And I had them in my house. And one day when I wasn't at home, my brother came to my house when I wasn't there, and he went inside, and he took a jelly spoon that was in there. That jelly spoon had been in our family for generations. It had been something that we all could benefit. And he took it, and I hate him for it. And I'm going to hate him for it. And the nurse thought to herself, "Hey, you can't do that, because it's going to destroy you." And so she tried to talk to her. She tried to say, "Hey, don't let that happen." But the lady wouldn't listen. And what happened was she ended up, in a sense, dying because of the vitriol and the hatred and the pain and the revenge that was inside of her, all over a jelly spoon. I'll bet there's a lot of us that have jelly spoons in our lives that'll keep us from being close to other people. We could ask the question a third time. This time we ask it of Rizpah. We say, "Rizpah, why are you here on the Hill of Gibeah?" And she says, "Well, I'm here because of a mother's love. I'm here because I love like a mother." And I read a story not so long ago about a little boy that was out on a street, big city street, and there was a big, beautiful new car sitting there, and he looked at that car and he wondered about it, and the man who owned the car came and saw him admiring the car, and he said to the boy said to the man, "Is this your car?" And he said, "Yeah, it's my car. My brother gave it to me." And the little boy looked at the car and he said, "Boy, I wish." And the man thought, "Yeah, I know what he wants. He's saying, I wish I had a brother like that." But he said, no, what he said was, "I wish I could be a brother like that." And the man said, "What do you mean you wish you could be?" He says, "Well, could we take the car?" And the man said, "I'll give you a ride in the car." And the boy said, "Well, could we drive by where I live?" And he thought, well, yeah, they want to drive by. So the big car will be there, and everybody will look at the car and think, boy, this little boy's got some big friends. But when they drove by, they came to a little apartment, and the boy said, could you stop for just a minute? He said, I want to show something to somebody. So he got out of the car, he ran up the steps, he ran inside of the facility, and after a while you could hear him coming back, and he was carrying something. And when he hit the door and opened it, and the door opened, he was carrying his brother. He took his little brother, and he sat him down on the stoop, and he looked at the car, and he said, someday I'm going to buy you a car like that. And the brother thought, man, that's wonderful, the little boy. And so the man who was driving the car said, you know, I'm going to do something for these two boys. So he put them in the car, and he drove them around town, and he took them to a couple of stores and bought them special things, and he took them to dinner, and he took them home. And he always remembered what the little boy had said when he saw the car. He said, I wish I could be a brother like that. That's the spirit we're talking about, the spirit of somebody like a mother's love. That's the kind of love that God can give to all of us. I'm grateful this morning for this story because it tells us something about the possibility in our lives of what can happen to us if we make the wrong decision. But love can overcome all obstacles. I'm praying today that God will let that happen in your life. God bless you.